Hello world! It's that time of year. Exams. I'm actually so scared for exams, and it's not because I don't understand the material, because I feel great about the material. It's just when I get into a test environment, it feels like everything just leaves me. Like I forget everything when I get into a test environment. And it's only those few classes whose study methods I'm about to introduce I follow for all my classes that I feel great. I'll clear that up by the end. But I find that it's better to have different study methods for different kinds of classes. So I'm going to start with the conceptual ones, like symbolism and things in class like English. So it's where you're trying to remember themes or messages or literary analysis or something like that, where it's not like you sit down and memorize by using environment, like by focusing on the setting, Hawthorne, blah blah blah, and the Scarlet Letter. Like you don't sit down and memorize it. You have to think through it and remember it and get an idea for it. So for this kind of class, I make PowerPoints. I know that sounds ridiculous, but I find that if I make it for myself, if I'm like teaching it to myself, I'll remember it better. I would recommend this for every class. I would try to explain my ideas either to a camera or to my friends or to myself, because I find teaching helps me remember things better. So try to make sure whatever you do to teach what you're learning to other people, and you'll remember it better, especially for a conceptual class like English. A couple of other tricks are to make diagrams or something like that, where you can see like a flow chart or something, like visualize it if you're a visual learner. To find more tips about memorizing things, see my other video. I'll put a link here to tips on memorizing things depending on the kind of learner you are. So for a conceptual class, try to do something visual. I would also practice literary analysis, like paragraphs. Even if you're not going to analyze anything in your exam, you might discover things by analyzing little chapters from a book. Like right now we're reading the Scarlet Letter at my school, and I find that every time I analyze a paragraph, I learn more than I would have by just reading through it or going on SparkNotes or something. But then we get to the thick, like dense classes like history and science, where everything's about the material, where you do need to sit down and memorize things. Again, check my other video about memorizing things, because it's obviously different for everybody. The way that you can memorize dates or names of chemicals or something like that. But with a dense class like that, just to keep track of everything, what I like to do is first reread my notes, because you can't avoid that. But I make practice tests for myself. Last year, I was a freshman and I had my first few exams, and I realized at one point, I sat down and gave myself a practice test, and I thought to myself, I don't know any of this. Because I can read things through as much as I want, but I won't remember it unless I put myself in a test environment or something like that. So what I like to do is read through my notes, and every time I find a big point, I'll write it down or I'll type it up. So at the end, I'll quiz myself at the end of every chapter or every section or every topic. That way, I'll make sure that I understand the topic before I move on, because sometimes I get lost in all the different subjects, and I'll find out if I actually really know it. And of course, if I don't know it, I'll word it similarly to my notes, and I'll remember where I read it to put down the question. I also find I get so bored studying for exams. I need to take tons of breaks. So every 45 minutes or so, move somewhere. Move to a bed, move to a chair, move to a couch, so your mind shifts into break mode. Because if you take breaks at your desk or where you're studying, your mind will, it's like feng shui. It's like your mind will associate break and study with your desk or your chair, and you'll never focus the same way again. So move somewhere, take a break, and then move back and start again. They say every 45 minutes or so you should take a break, because your mind will remember better what you learned when you came back from the break and what you learned before you went to the break. So it's actually better to take breaks. It also helps keep you calm. And if you're not going to take breaks, be with your friends, because you can laugh about stupid things your teacher said or how ridiculous some of your material is. And they might ask you questions that you never considered to be important. I learn a lot more from my friends than I do from my own notes. And I find if I'm trying to memorize something and I know I cannot remember it, I'll ask myself during the day, I sit down for lunch, when was the Battle of the Milvian Bridge? 3:12, and then I'll start eating. So if I ask myself, I'll repeat it to myself throughout the day. If I sit down and I go 312, I'm not going to remember it. So ask yourself these questions during the day in a dense class like history. And don't forget to explain to other people. It makes a huge difference in the way that you remember your own material, because you may see things in a new light when you have to explain them to someone else, sometimes multiple times. And good luck on your exams. Stay calm, get lots of sleep, eat nutritiously. But it's also, yeah, that's about it. Bye!